Good morning, my darlings, my angels, my loves, my he's, she's, and theys. Mother is in the house. It is a wonderful Wednesday morning. I'm so happy to be here with you. Good morning, good morning. Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Here it is. Here we are. Here we are. We're talking about something super chill and not absolutely catastrophic and terrifying at all. I wanted to talk about something that has been on my mind more and more as time goes on, because I very much talk about how being raised in the evangelical Christian church was traumatic for myself in a lot of ways. I think that growing up in the evangelical Christian church can be very personally limiting, and the belief system that you are raised under can be a way to hold us all back from evolving into, our best selves or whatever. I think that especially as a woman in the church, it was really dark to grow up in that environment and constantly having to convince myself to subjugate myself for the sake of men in the church. And there are a lot of ways that I think it's important to push back against evangelical Christianity, especially here in the United States, as the religious right grows into more and more power. And there are a lot of ways that, again, individuals are holding themselves back, maybe out of fear, maybe out of hatred, whatever. I think a lot of people are afraid to critically question the dominant cultural ideology of Christianity here in the United States. And I want to challenge that. I want people to, feel empowered to stand up for themselves and stand up for who they want to be, even if the United States, or I should say, even if Christianity doesn't necessarily support that in the mainstream narrative. Thank you so much for the gifted membership. Oh my gosh, we are doing so great already this morning. I'm not even like 5 minutes in. But in line with how evangelical Christianity holds back individuals and holds back its own people, I think that the most sinister aspect of evangelical Christianity is how here in the United States, the narrative that is most often touted amongst the religious pastors, amongst the church leaders, is how these harmful ideologies end up harming others outside of the Christian church itself, right? So yes, I was raised as a Christian, and it was unhealthy for me. It held me back in a lot of ways. It was very harmful in that way. But in the end, I think the most sinister part about my upbringing was being told as a child, as a middle schooler, as a high schooler, to proudly proclaim myself as a Zionist. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. Because Christian Zionism is, I think, one of the most understood, or the most misunderstood, and one of the most brushed over aspects of evangelical Christianity, but it's also one of the most influential in the sense that it is shaping both American Christianity and United States foreign policy. And I talk about this a lot because I think it is super important. And again, this is not a reflection of how I think that everyday Christians are somehow more responsible for the occupying apartheid state of the state of Israel in relation to the ethnic cleansing that is being attempted regarding the Palestinians. I think everyone in the United States is complicit in a lot of different ways. But the institution and the ideology of Christianity is being used to justify, I think, in a lot of ways, the expenditure of tax dollars to support the statehood of Israel at all costs, and in particularly encouraging the evangelical voting bloc to vote for leaders who support the statehood of Israel at all costs, even genocidal costs. Because at its core, Christian Zionism is, just for a brief summary, it's the biblical prophecy that Christians have, and how they have a religious obligation to support the Israeli government unconditionally in order to fulfill that prophecy in order to bring about the end times. I talk about this a lot on my channel as well, about how when I was raised in the evangelical Christian church, the end times were talked about a lot. I got a lot of sermons, a lot of lectures in Bible class about Armageddon and the book of Revelation. And without fail, that always does bring up the question of the statehood of Israel, okay? And what I want to talk about today is how it's not just theology. That's how it was framed for me growing up in that environment. I was told that this is just part of God's plan and it's something that we have to take seriously, etc. But it's also, it manifests through, maybe not myself as a middle schooler, but as an adult who, for adults who vote, it becomes a geopolitical conversation, right? Because the consequences of this belief system go far beyond the church walls, the Bible-based private school that I went to. I don't think Christian Zionism at the end of the day is about personal faith at all. I think it is about real world politics and billions of dollars in military aid, the normalization and justification of occupation and apartheid and displacement, all in the name of prophecy. So when it comes to Christian Zionism, I do try to talk about this a lot because I think it is the most violent and immoral manifestation of the dominant cultural ideology of Christianity. We can talk about, again, the ways that individuals hold themselves back and women subjugate themselves for the sake of men, and how you're believing in a fairy tale, all of these really important conversations. But at the end of the day, the most drastic and the most horrific result of all of those beliefs is Christian Zionism, is the genocidal justification of the statehood of Israel. And the worst results are for the Palestinians, but Palestinians are not the only ones who are harmed by this. It's also, I think it is a very real threat almost to democracy and diplomacy and even just the idea of religious ethics for people who do want to stay religious, or maybe people who want to call themselves progressive Christians, or they want to adhere to these religious doctrines, maybe for reasons that have nothing to do with Christian with Zionism. I would really challenge these people. If your ideology, if your religion is the belief system that is being used to justify this level of violence, I seriously challenge you to look at it. Okay? And just question if you want to be adhering to that. And I understand the argument of well, they're not doing Christianity right. Jesus preached peace. Okay, but again, if the result of a belief system that might be so pure and innocent in nature can lead to such a serious level of violence and immorality, does that not make you question the root of that supposed innocence in the first place? So that's what I kind of want to talk about today. To start, Christian Zionism, and this is something that I've only recently started researching. I was not taught specifically about this interpretation of the Bible known as dispensationalism, but I'm learning more about this framework that became popular in the 19th century thanks to theologians like John Nelson Darby. And according to him, God has divided history into distinct dispensations, or time periods of divine, of God's divine plan. And in this system, apparently the nation of Israel plays a starring role in the end times. And it wasn't framed to me as dispensationalism or these time periods in history other than just the end times, right? That was the only thing that we really talked about. But anyone who adheres to the idea of the Christian apocalyptic end times believe, if you're doing the biblical literalism approach to a study of the book of Revelation, right, which is, according to Christian mythology, the book that does prophesy the end times. And what's interesting about that is there's a lot of historical textual analysis that suggests that a lot of these ideas that modern evangelical Christian preachers talk about in relation to the book of Revelation and the end times, all of these interpretations were added way, way, way after the book was even written, right? Like, all of these interpretations were added almost like a reverse engineering of what these prophecies mean. And I mean, this is going to be no surprise to the majority of my audience, but, using biblical scripture and reinterpreting it over and over and over to suit modern times. Like, now people are reverse engineering how some of these scriptures obviously spoke about COVID. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously the Bible predicted COVID, even though we literally never heard of anything like that before COVID happened. Like, stuff like that. There are so many, debunking videos and scholarly sources that talk about this. I'm not the first one to, but, winding back a little bit, for those of the evangelical Christian church, which again is this is not a fringe belief. This is something that I think is really important, especially for people who grew up outside of the Christian church, to understand. I went to a mega church, thousands of people every Sunday, okay? One of the many mega churches who preaches the same thing here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which I think only has a population of like 400,000 people. Like, it's a city, but it's not that big, all right? And we are just one city in the United States. The evangelical Christian church has a large reach. The dominant cultural narrative in this country, all right, is Christianity. And it is not out of left field that I'm bringing this up. The large majority of people have, I don't want to say the large majority of people, but I do think we have looked at the statistics, and we can look them up in a second, but that suggest that the majority of evangelical Christians believe in the accuracy and the literacy of the end times in the book of Revelation. So all of that to say, it's not a fringe belief. There are so many evangelical Christians who believe in the end times according to the dictation of the book of Revelation, the dictation of the book of Revelation. So all of these people believe that, and this is what I was taught as well, believe that before Jesus comes back for the rapture or the second coming, that's a whole nother thing, that the Jewish people must be gathered back to the Holy Land, that the temple must be rebuilt, that's a key one, and another, just like a general series of apocalyptic events must unfold after that, right? So like there's the 7-year period called the tribulation that we are taught about. And I'm just like briefly touching on some of the prophecies that need to come to pass. There, I don't really have time to do a full deep dive right here, but it's really graphic. It's really intense. This is where the idea of the 4 horsemen come into play, because there are these like 4 pale horsemen, these like riders of doom, and they bring with them plagues and nuclear war, and the rise of the Antichrist happens, and eventually, Jesus comes back again, and it's just, there's this whole drama to it. Like, there's so much lore in the book of Revelation, all right? And I know it sounds dramatic because it is, but all of the insanity of spending my life, like so much of my life, so many hours of my life listening to lectures about Armageddon aside, like as frustrating as it is to look back and be like, I could have been some kind of fucking academic prodigy, but no, I spent my time learning about mythology, which ended up being false in the first place. That's frustrating. Yeah. But the reason that this is all especially dangerous is because it's not just about my belief. It's not just about what I was taught. It's not just about what thousands and thousands of people are taught around this country. It is a political agenda. It is a geopolitical move. Because in the United States, Christian Zionism has become a dominant force, not just in evangelical culture, but right-wing evangelical culture. I talk about this all the time about how, you know, people will tell me not to talk about both politics and religion, and I will turn that around and say, but that's how I was raised. I was raised in the evangelical Christian church, and I was indoctrinated into it hand in hand as I was indoctrinated into conservatism. There is so much about how forces behind the religious right in the United States actively used churches and televangelists and celebrity pastors and mega church leaders to sway the opinions of the church congregation for decades. And one of the results of that is the unwavering support for Israel. And I want to make it clear that this is not, that it was framed in this way for me, that this was about protecting the Jewish people and Jewish safety and Jewish rights. And that is how it is justified to support the statehood of Israel no matter what. And what I had to deconstruct and understand as I've been educating myself is understanding that a critique of the statehood of Israel and the political actions that the state of Israel is taking with the support of the United States, it actually has nothing to do with supporting, Jewish people, with supporting Jewish rights, sorry, that's a tongue twister, Jewish safety. And there's a lot of, I think, a conflation of critiquing the state of Israel with anti-Semitism. And I think that's honestly so destructive to Jewish people who deserve rights and autonomy and safety and human dignity and all of these things. But equating them with the statehood of Israel, I think, is inappropriate, to say the least. But because at the end of the day, like, it's still using the Jewish people as a pawn as pawns in order to bring about the results that this state desires. And honestly, as tools to bring about the return of Christ, the return of Jesus, according to Christian theology. I was even taught that Jewish people who don't convert to Christianity will ultimately be destroyed in the final judgment. Like, it's almost like anti-Semitism is baked into Christian Zionism. Does that make sense? So I don't think Christian Zionism is about loving the Jewish people or being, standing up for the Jewish people in the first place. I think it's about using the Jewish people to fulfill a Christian agenda. And that's not solidarity. That is exploitation. That is inappropriate. And it's just, again, another a manifestation of the harm that this belief system spouts. And so then you have all of these political implications of the ideology, how Christian Zionists have lobbied for billions of dollars in military aid to Israel, whether they believe it or not. There are other motivations for the United States to have a stronghold in the Middle East that have nothing to do with the false mythology of Christianity. And I think a lot of the political leaders in power know that, and again, just use the voting power of the Christian congregation to get more and more money sent for their, agendas. And they've pressured politicians to move embassies, as we've seen. They oppose ceasefires because we need the conflict to escalate. Christianity needs the conflict to escalate in order to bring about Jesus' second coming and all of that. Like, it's honestly so insane. And that's why we see the rejection of any resisting any criticism of the Israeli government, no matter what it does. And again, most alarmingly, most frustratingly, is they've helped fuel and justify the occupation of the Palestinian land. And so I think that myth only serves to protect itself from its guilt of its own genocide. Oh, one criticism, please stop linking Christians to Gaza. It's like you don't even fucking listen to me, to the words that are coming out of my fucking mouth when I say that I grew up as an evangelical Christian, being told in middle school to call myself a Zionist, which is a geopolitical stance to take that is supporting violence. A middle schooler has no business being told to take a geopolitical stance. It's like you don't even listen to the words that are coming out of my fucking mouth. I swear to Goddess. I'm not going to be chill about this. So if you're going to come into my chat today and you're going to tell me anything about how I apparently don't understand my own upbringing correctly, or I'm misinterpreting the literal lectures that I spent hours sitting through and not you, you can absolutely that's how I feel about that. People are not responsible for the leaders. I understand where you're getting at, in the sense that it's important to be able to separate the everyday people from the maybe religious leaders or the political leaders, especially in the sense that everyday people probably spend 15 of their 16 waking hours just trying to survive and putting food on the table for their kids and their families. And then maybe for one day, or, for 1 hour a day, they're consuming news or information or, geopolitical, I don't expect the everyday person to have a deep understanding of how the world. I have a lot of education myself that I have to do. But I understand that the everyday person, there needs to be a lot of grace, because a lot of people are just trying to survive, and they are kind of getting duped by the religious leaders, by the political leaders who are trying to use their voting power, and the fact that they are not informed enough, right? Like, I don't think Christian Zionists like myself, when I was growing up, had the room, to the bandwidth, the understanding, the education, the information to take a legitimate stance. My point here is I was literally just being indoctrinated into something without using my own critical thinking. So it's that's tricky, because I do recognize that people are actively getting manipulated, and they don't have time to source check and fact check every single thing when they are trying to literally survive and put food on the table, right? So I get that. At the same time, I do try really hard to talk about how we can empower ourselves and educate ourselves and do the work, and all of this stuff. So that's tricky. I know what you mean, but it's just a matter of recognizing where society as a whole, and understanding that for those of us who do spend the time to inform ourselves and educate us, that we are there is a responsibility to keep having these conversations and have this opportunity to talk about the dangers of something like Christian Zionism, which is I think after all of the deconstruction I've done, which I've done for years, right? I've been deconstructing from evangelical Christianity for over a decade at this point. But it wasn't until the last couple of years, ever since, I hate to say this, I hate to reduce it to such a thing, but essentially my TikTok algorithm started telling me about October 7th, and the Palestinian genocide. And I was like, what does Free Palestine mean? And it's crazy, because I started, learning about and educating myself about the plight of the Palestinians from a very secular political point of view. And then the more I got into what was actually going on, and how Israel is, above reproach according to mainstream United States narratives, I very much realized, I started to understand oh, this is what I was taught about in middle school, in Bible class. Okay? When I was told to be a Zionist, it's crazy. I didn't hear. There are two time periods in my life when the word Zionism or Zionist was in the forefront of the material that I was consuming or the lectures I was listening to, right? So the first time that I heard about Zionism and Zionists was when I was growing up in the evangelical Christian church, right? When I was going to Bible class every day and church every Sunday and Wednesday, right? Being told to be a Zionist, literally the word Zionist, right? Be a Zionist, be a Zionist, be a Zionist. and all of this stuff. And so then I graduated high school. I went out into the world. I went to college. I started doing my own thing and all of this stuff. Didn't hear the word Zion, totally left my mind, right? Never thought about it again. Wasn't a big deal. And then when I started understanding and learning about and educating myself about the politics of the Middle East as much as I can, I started seeing this word again, Zionism or Zionist. And I was just like, my gosh, that's like ringing such a bell. Like I was told about this all these years ago. I can't believe it's coming back. Little did I fucking know how that word is used in such a way for the people who are raised religiously in this country to justify, again, political stances, to justify political actions. Our church regularly sang a song called "We're Marching on to Zion." Yeah, it's so sinister. It's so sinister. It's crazy. It's crazy. 2 minutes chat till what? I got that shaggy hair, love it, like a wolf cut hairband style. Thank you. Yeah, it's a little bit more rock and roll. So yeah, okay. So let's keep going. I think that so like there's so much about Christian Zionism that is so harmful, right? Christian Zionism treats the genocide against, the displacement, the general suffering of the Palestinians as at I don't want to say at best, but as not the worst, irrelevant, and at worst, necessary, okay? We're talking about entire communities getting dehumanized and erased in the name of biblical prophecy, in the name of the end times and the destiny therein, right? And whenever there is an escalation of violence, okay, the response from, and I can tell you this firsthand, the response from Christian Zionist leaders is usually one of triumph, is usually one of celebration, because to them, again, it's just another step toward the rapture. And this really undermines, like, I think more than, again, so, the worst result of this is the violence being done against the Palestinians. But even on the home front, I think that this really undermines democracy, because whenever you have this conflation of politics and religion, of church and state, as evangelical Christians are taught, it becomes not possible to have a normal, healthy political debate, because these evangelical Christians are viewing a geopolitical issue, an issue in the Middle East, okay? A conversation about the economics and the human rights and all of these very real these very real subjects. All of that is getting framed in the sense of spiritual warfare for evangelical Christians, like how I was raised. I can't tell you how many times growing up I was told that we are not governed by political leaders or regimes or whatever, but that we were governed here on earth by principalities and powers of the air. That is based on a biblical scripture that I heard all of the time, and it has to do with these like demonic forces, like fallen angels, aka the Nephilim. We can get into that another time, babe. That is so much. Or demons, or Satan himself, or what the fuck ever. These demonic forces like playing the game of humanity, and these like principalities and powers of the air that were like physically stationed over regions of the world. And that whenever there is something in the geopolitical sphere to vote about, we had to, as evangelical Christians, look at the topics from the lens of spiritual warfare. Does that make sense? So like in that sense, there is no democracy. There is no consensus. There is no healthy debate. And that is why I always talk about how very deep the beliefs of evangelical Christians go. This is how very This is why MAGA supporters, or the hardcore evangelical Christians, the hardcore religious right, they believe so deeply, because they don't just think that this is about whether or not people in the Middle East should eat, whether or not we should maybe stop doing a genocide, X, Y, or Z. This is about, oh, if I don't take this stance of righteousness, I'm going to spend an eternity in hell. This theology goes so deep, it is disgusting. I am embarrassed that I grew up in it. I am trying to talk about it. I want to shout out whoever just gifted 10 memberships on my YouTube channel. Thank you. I am so grateful for you guys. You guys are the ones that show up, and we make this community what it needs to be. I really appreciate all of you guys. Who did that? Was that Brad? You guys are amazing. And I just want to again reiterate that this is I take that less of a reflection of how awesome I am, though an argument could totally be made that that was just for the sake of my new haircut. I'm kidding. But I think that really speaks to how much this conversation is resonating with everyone, and how much, I mean, I'm hoping my one goal, if I were to be doing this for the rest of my life, and that was Brad. Thank you, Brad, so much. Thank you, darling. Thank you, darling, for growing this community and caring about these conversations and taking it seriously. We have so much work to do. Yeah, Brad is awesome. Shout out to Brad for gifting all of those YouTube memberships. Twitch has a lot to do to catch up for the subscriptions. I'm just going to throw that out there, because YouTube is definitely in the lead. But all of that to say, I more than anything, go Brad, go. Yeah, exactly. More than anything, I think that, okay, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. A lot of secular people have the issue of not being able to comprehend the delusion of the religious mind. And that is what I'm trying to speak to. There's two reasons that I wanted to talk about this today. One, it's for people who grew up outside of evangelical Christianity, who don't understand what the fuck is going on internally in the minds of these people. And again, there's a caveat that I do think is important to remember, because if we're here talking about the systemic issues of society, of this country, of government, of, the plight of the working class, etc., I do think it's important to remember that even when I'm critiquing evangelical Christianity and the institution of the organized religion that has, that's married to the politics in this country, etc., even when I critique those, I do think it's important to separate the everyday Christians who may be voting for the religious right, and that's something they need to be held accountable for. I'm not excusing it, but I think it is so important to remember that most of the people in the Christian church are just trying to survive. They are putting food on the table. They are showing up at church on Sundays because they want their kids to have friends, right? Or something. Like I don't think people show up to church over and over again. I think people can just show up to church over and over again for the sake of community. Then as a result, because these evangelical teachers are preaching this, justification of violence from the pulpit, so many everyday evangelical Christians, they are too busy surviving. They are too busy surviving. Now, is that to suggest that they have it any easier than other, maybe more marginalized communities in this country, especially when we're talking about white evangelical Christians? No, I'm not suggesting that at all. But the reason that I think it is so easy to stay in the brainwashed indoctrination of the evangelical Christian church is because life is fucking hard out here for all of us. Like the concept of uniting the working class is because the divisions amongst us, the general gap of wealth inequality here in the United States, at the very least, is so vast. It's so unethical. It's so immoral. All of these terrible things, right? So I do try to bring to the forefront that a lot of these people don't have time to fact check. A lot of these people don't have time to check sources and do a very deep, personal scholarly analysis of the book of Revelation. They're going to listen to their pastor because that's the best they can do. That's the best they can do. And I say that as someone who grew up in that environment and then did my own internal work and did do all of the questioning and, read all of the books I needed to break free. from the religious dogma that was so sinister and holding myself back and causing me to support violence no matter what. Like, I say that as someone who did the work to break free. It's a lot. It's a lot of work. And I can tell you this. I have seriously questioned myself. I have wondered if I had children, like my parents had me when they were 20 and 22 years old. And that is when I started leaving the church. Do you understand? Like, I was 22 years old. 22? I was 21 years old. I was 21 years old when I officially told myself I was not a Christian anymore. If I had a child, I don't know if I would have gotten there. I don't know if when I was worrying about putting food on the table and making sure my kid was socialized and all of these things, I bet you I would have kept going to church, and I don't know if I would have left. So that is an important facet that I think we need to remember when we're like getting pissed off at how the organization of Christianity is 100% being used to justify a very real genocide and ethnic cleansing that is happening. 100%. But you guys know that I talk about this all the time. If we want to talk about uniting the working class, we've got to take a different approach to these people who are actively being brainwashed and actively being indoctrinated, and don't have time to do the fact checking. That's why it's kind of on us. That's why it's kind of on us to bring these conversations to the forefront. That's why I do this every day, because I'm here for two people. I'm here, as I was saying earlier, to explain to people who didn't grow up in this environment what is going on behind the scenes, okay? Why these intense belief systems are so deeply identified with by people who don't spend the time or take the time to question biblical literalism, right? I'm here to explain that to people who grew up outside of this environment. And I'm here for the people still in this environment who maybe are starting to question, who maybe are starting to be like, something's off, who are looking around in their church congregation and they're thinking, what the fuck is all of this? You know what I mean? Like, especially for women in the Christian church. And I say especially not because I say especially just because obviously I am a woman, and I think the numbers are showing this. Like, we have looked on this channel before, how the research is showing that women are leaving the patriarchal religions more and more because they're not serving us anymore. Like, we're waking up to the fact that patriarchal religions just are not serving our spiritual needs. Not to mention all the violence that is brought about in the name of organized patriarchal religions, etc. So I say, particularly women, because that's the audience that I really think I can connect with. I would love to have more conversations with women leaving the church because it's so intense, and that's just close to my heart. But at the end of the day, those are the two main audiences that I do. I mean, I do this for everyone. You know what I mean? Like, even if you don't necessarily fall into these two categories, like, my point is the two main audiences that I think are drawn to me are people who have deconstructed from any kind of religion, any level of religious upbringing, and also the people who are still deconstructing. Does that make sense? Because I think it's important I think it's important for the conversation that we're having today, right? So again, this goes back to what I was saying kind of earlier. Like, I want the everyday person to break free from organized religion, because that is when you can start rebuilding your identity based on your own morality, your own sense of self, your own sexuality, because as I always say, you can't talk about religion without talking about sex. And whenever an institution has the control over someone's sexuality, they control everything about that person. Period, full stop. What was I saying? Sorry, I got distracted by a compliment. So it is so important. I want to bring liberation consciousness to the everyday person, because I think the best way to reform these systems and these power structures that are so unhealthy, to say the least, not to mention at the end of their natural life cycle, in relation to the history of human evolution. Again, as I talk about all the time, I think that the best way to, you guys are gifting so many memberships. YouTube, you're gonna make me blush. I can't. That's so sweet. Oh my God. That's so many. That's so many memberships, you guys. Your femininity and raw truth and anger are the best middle finger to the patriarchy. That's like the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. Thank you so much. Oh no, the Azula emote. I love it. How long ago did you start your deconstruction process? 12 years? About 12 years ago. 12 years ago, like this time of year. It was like April, May when I told myself when I accepted and realized that I wasn't a Christian anymore. And so that started this really intense deconstruction process. And, you know, we talk a lot about on my channel how not to stop there. Kayse looking cute. Not to stop with just deconstructing from religion and saying, okay, I don't believe in this anymore. I don't believe in this anymore. I don't believe in this anymore. And to start at, you know, I try really hard to start talking about, okay, how can we define our personal core values? How can we build community outside of religion? And all of these more productive and rebuilding kind of narratives. That's really important to me. For the personal journeys of the people who are joining this community and supporting this community, like that is one of our core values that we very much prioritize here, right? And so that is a big part of why I do this work, why I'm here every day with you guys, so that Kayse Crew Rising. Okay, you guys, I'm like, stop. Okay, don't stop. No. Okay, so. Anyway, the personal liberation of all of these people that we can, you know, speak to and grow with and build community together is super important to me because, again, I think as more and more individuals wake up to, I'm like playing right into wokeism, I know, but become aware of these, of all of these power structures. So we talk about deconstruction from organized religion, capitalism, white supremacy, and patriarchy. Like when people start to understand the integration, this is why we talk about intersectional feminism, or, you know, an intersectional approach to all of these different power structures and hierarchies. The more an individual can kind of decolonize and deconstruct internally, the more we can start reshaping society and building something better from like a horizontal level, from the ground up, instead of being dictated to from the top down, if that makes sense. So that's why building community horizontally is so important, and deconstructing this top-down approach and understanding that if we connect more horizontally this way, we can actually start to grow vertically on a more even, or, you know, equal playing field. So there's all of that that's super important as far as liberating the individual, all of us educating ourselves, coming here together. There are so many resources that you guys put in the Discord that have really brought me to challenge myself and grow my education, and grow even like fine-tuning my arguments for, you know, whenever I end up on some weird ass debate show that we watch together. But all of that stuff, whatever, you know, all of that is super important. But at the end of the day, at the end of all of that, as important as it is to me to meet people where they're at and have these very serious deconstruction narratives, as great as it is that this is the highest number of viewers we've ever had on this stream. We're at 116. We hit 121 earlier. That's the highest number we've ever had. As awesome as that is, as much as like building this community is so important and all of this stuff, the actual material results of breaking all of this down needs to lead to freeing the Palestinians. Because currently, and they're not alone as far as like the violence of you know, Western colonialism. I'm trying to educate myself more. There's a lot more in the global South, and there's so much more going on. But conceptually, the violence that our system, our capitalist colonialist society is committing is what needs to be the result needs to be stopping that, reversing it. All of it needs to stop, right? And that is why we do this too, right? So as important as it is for me to talk about the individual liberation after deconstruction or decolonizing these narratives X, Y, and Z, the actual, real reason that we have to do this work is because there is so much violence being done. Is because Christian Zionism is being used to justify a genocide, right? And that's what we need to stand on business about. And that's what we're here for. And that's why I appreciate all of you guys being here and building this community and investing in these conversations that are so much more important than just fact checking a Bible verse. Like, you know what I mean? And that's not to say that I kind of rag on other content creators who spend all of their time just debunking the Bible. And maybe that's not really fair to say, because it is important work that leads to the deconstruction of these narratives and these hierarchies. Maybe I need to be better about that, but it's not my style. Like it's not important to me to spend all of my time, debunking the Bible, because I'm like, we have bigger fish to fry. But I understand that it's just kind of a part of the conversation that's moving the needle, at least in the general direction that we need it to go. So that's crazy. I've been talking for 47 minutes straight, and I was gonna watch 3 videos with you guys, and now we're running out of time. But we'll just save these for another time. But deconstruction takes 3 to 15 years. Yeah, well said. Something else that I very often talk about, which is that the Bible. I knew what you meant, Matt. I knew what you meant. Deconstruction takes 3 to 15 years conservatively. You know what I mean? And also, to that point, I'm still deconstructing. That is, I like to think of it as a never-ending journey. I like to think of it as a not a destination, but a pathway. Okay, there are still things. Literally this week at work, the things I'm dealing with at my 9 to 5 job. There are things that I am reacting to internally, and I am checking myself oh, wait, hold on, I'm not going to hell if I do something wrong or all of this. There are still things that I am deconstructing. And I want us to think about it that way, because first of all, when we think about it that way, we're always challenging ourselves to grow and be open-minded and understand, the bigger picture, etc. But second of all, I think it's important to think of deconstruction as a journey and not a destination, because I think it is so fucking crucial to be able to look at people who are in earlier stages of their deconstruction journey. Maybe they're taking a longer path. Maybe they are taking a different path. Hello from Turkey. Hi. Maybe they are taking a different path, and we need to be cognizant of that. There are so many people who have joined this community, who have showed up here every day with you guys, who have told me either publicly or privately that that they are still calling themselves a Christian, that they're like, hey, I'm a Christian, but I'm deconstructing. Do you understand? These people they are actively questioning these harmful narratives. And if I took the very, hard stance of no Christians allowed, if I wasn't always actively trying to say, hey, we need to make space for everyday Christians, we need to separate everyday Christians from the harmful belief systems and institutions, how is that moving the needle? And I really challenge people with that. And you guys can go look at my YouTube comment sections there's nothing I can say that people won't have a problem with. I can't say, hey, we need to be more spiritual, or hey, we need to be completely materialist, without people being assholes or whatever. Ooh, is someone being creepy? Are they talking about how hot I am? I missed it. Deconstruction from two-party politics, the left and the right. Correct. Yeah, for the record, if I haven't said this yet, deconstructing and shutting out Christians is pulling the ladder up behind you. Well said. Yeah, if I haven't said it yet, though, as far as the left and the right, there's no... my critique of the religious right is because I was raised in the religious right. I am not that does not immediately suggest that I support the Democratic Party, which is really... the argument can definitely be made that they are just controlled opposition for the oligarchical powers. There's still so much I'm learning about. Again, I can talk about deconstructing from religion in my sleep, and I'm still learning so much about the political sphere. But no, Joe is not being creepy. Oh, okay. Never mind. I didn't know. I have no idea. free spirited. Yeah, that's why I say like my podcast, the Kayse Melone Show, is it's called A Podcast for Free Thinkers and Free Spirits. That was very intentional because I know that the atheist community very much rallies around the word free thinker or free thinking, right? It's this idea of being skeptical and using critical thinking and rationalism, etc. But I included free spirits for a lot of the reasons that I talk about a lot, which is to suggest that I think that there is room for being a free spirit and for having this like more spiritual approach to atheism. That was my bad. I have no idea. It's okay. Nobody's in trouble. I just saw one comment, you know, we've got a lot of chatters today, and I just can't stop looking at my banks. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, there's free spirits is important to me too. I included that so that we can, also attract people who just maybe are spiritual, not religious. That's an important community to me, especially because that I think resonates a lot with women who have deconstructed from the church. We've talked about this before, how the women who have deconstructed are in the spiritual, not religious community. Like, we're talking about the astrology girls, the tarot girls. I refuse to say no to them. I refuse to say I'm not interested in them being in my life. Like, they're my favorite people. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not interested in taking a hard stance of like, no, you have to believe my exact specific way. You have to call yourself an atheist to be in my crew or whatever. Free spirits means open bar, right? Yeah, you guys go for it. I don't drink anymore. It's so funny. My little like purity culture 16-year-old self promising to abstain from everything would be so proud of me, not dating around and not drinking like for reasons that are very different than trying to get into heaven. But it is what it is. I think it's funny. It is what it is. Okay, you guys, we did really well. We did really well today. Wow, you guys, that was like what? 1 million YouTube memberships? That was crazy. Twitch has 10 subscribers, and YouTube I think probably has 30, 40 members now. It's the same pay structure at $4.99 a month. So everyone who gifted YouTube memberships today, y'all are the real ones. Y'all are my heroes. That was crazy. I was not expecting that at all. But you guys deliver, and I just really appreciate you guys believing in the conversations we're having and believing in growing this. Life is a nightmare circus of evil men trying to do evil to each other for profits. I mean, so there's that. Oh wait, someone said something fun. For some reason, you remind me of British punk rockers from back in the day in attitude. I love that. I think that was a compliment. Either way, I'm taking it as one. Yeah, guys, we did really well today. I showed up wanting to talk about the most sinister aspect of Christian conservative indoctrination, and the real material results of all of these, harmful belief systems that lead to violence, right? And you guys showed up, and we had the largest, gifting of memberships today, and the largest number of viewers. So that's crazy. That is super, I think, encouraging in the sense that it means people are aware of what is going on, and it means we are building something that actually resonates with people, and it really matters. So with that, I think I'm going to let everyone be. Tomorrow, I do want to talk about the Bad Faith documentary. I think it's on Amazon Prime. I think it's free on Tubi. The Discord grows too. Yes, hop in the Kayse and Friends Discord, everyone, so we can continue these conversations all day long, because I know you just can't get enough of me and my new hair. But tomorrow I do want to talk about Bad Faith, the documentary about Christian nationalism. I have already learned so much from that documentary. Obviously we won't be able to watch it on the stream, but I want to talk about it with you guys. I want to dive into it a little bit and see where we can go from there. Shadow. Yeah. My good boy. He's asleep over there. But yeah, so with all of that, thank you guys so much for being the best people in my life right now. I'm kidding. I live with my brother. He's pretty great too. So yes. You watched that? You watched the Bad Faith documentary? Cool. That's what we're going to talk about tomorrow morning, right here, 7 a.m. Central Time, which I recently learned there's a difference between Central Standard Time and Central Time, and I think I was using it wrong. My bad. So yes. Okay. With that. All right. I'm going to go. I want to stay. I really do. Someday we will get to the point where I don't just have an hour every morning. I promise. Someday, maybe soon, we will get to the point, especially if you guys stay on this track with the memberships. Maybe soon we will get to the point where this is not just an hour a day. I love Atheist YouTube, bunch of anarchists. We love it. Bad Faith Doc is good quality. So excited to talk about it with you guys. Be safe, be well, make choices. I love you guys. Hang out in the Discord so we can talk more. Okay, I'm sorry. Stay, Kayse. I can't. I have to go to my job. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Actually, before I go, YouTube members who are joining the Discord that don't get access to all of the right channels, there's something going on. So I need to, I do fangirl over the chat. I'm like blushing. I don't know if you guys can tell. But YouTube members who join the Discord, I think I need to figure out why they're not connecting. I had to log out of my YouTube and then log out of my, okay, so like once I set up the private channels on the Discord, I had to log out of Discord and then log back into Discord. But you guys aren't, I think everyone's having a problem with the YouTube members getting access to the Discord. So I do want to troubleshoot that today if I can. If anyone wants to kind of help me with that, I don't know. But I do want you guys obviously to have access to the private channels. So we will work on that. At the very least, I'll just like manually give that to anyone, but just know that I'm trying to figure out why it's not working automatically for you. And we will take care of it so that we can hang out even more. Okay. With that, now I've got to go. All right. I love you guys. Be safe, be well, make choices. Shadow says have a good day. I say have a good day. And I will see you tomorrow, bright and early, right here. I love you.